Good morning and welcome to WASA. This is PLAR History and Geography. Again, my name is Jonathan. I am your teacher for this course. Reminder to participate, you can call in the radio at 1-800-465-7144. That is 1-800-465-7144 if you want to radio in and participate. Reminder, you can always call me at my office here at Wassa in Silico. My extension is 2221. You can always email me, find me on my Facebook page at jhillwassa. Uh, this week we are entering week 8. Just a reminder, we have 3 more classes after this class. Okay, 3 more classes. So we got today, Thursday, and next week, and that's it for this term. Okay, with that being said, just a reminder, deadline to register for term B. The deadline to register for term B is next Friday, November 6th. Okay, so if you want to continue taking PLAR or any other of our online classes, remember we need to register, and that deadline is next Friday, November 6th for term B. Okay, if you have any questions or any concerns, you can talk to your DEC. They should help you. If not, you can get a hold of me. I will answer any of your questions the best that I can. And if I can't, I will find the answer or I will guide you in the right direction. Okay? So yes, we are looking at PLAR History and Geography. This is week 8. And we are going to continue looking at where we left off last class. Okay, class, so today our learning goals, and our objective today is that you will be learning about the 4 components of the environment. You will be learning about global warming and why we should be concerned about it, and looking at things that upset the balance of the environment. We will also be looking at the Kyoto Protocol, in which countries have agreed to reduce their greenhouse emission gases, and countries that have not agreed to this agreement. Okay, so again, lots of information, a lot of content that needs to be still need to be covered throughout this term. Okay, so we have this week and next week left together. Okay, again, please let me know if you're participating online with your Bridget software. That way I can make a note of it. And that's it for my housekeeping notes. With that being said, we're going to continue where we left off. Again, I'm going to do a quick review of what we covered last class about Canada's ecosystem and different types of trees. Just very, very briefly, just to recap, to refresh our memory, and then we'll begin looking at the environment and the Kyoto Protocol. Okay? Any questions, any comments, any concerns at the moment? All right, let's begin. So last class we looked about trees, different types of trees. We talked about coniferous trees and deciduous trees. Just a reminder, a coniferous tree has cones or needles. So for example, a pine tree, a spruce tree, a cedar tree are all example of a coniferous tree. So they don't have leaves, but they have cones and needles. Whereas on the other hand, we have a deciduous tree, where they do have leaves, and their leaves often fall or shed during the fall season. So for example, of a deciduous trees are a maple tree, an oak tree, birch tree, and such more. Okay, so these are the 2 main types of trees that we have here in Canada. Okay. And we talked about weather, the difference between each term. Weather, is short term, it's a day-to-day condition in the atmospheric conditions. It changes day to day, hourly by hourly. So it could be sunny at one moment, then be cloudy. It could be windy or raining. So each day we have different types of temperature. That is what we call weather. That is what weather is. Again, climate is the long-term pattern of a weather condition over a long extended period of time. So climate is the average weather of a particular area, not any particular date or time of year. It's a long-term condition. So we know that winter is often cold and summer is often warm. The North Pole, for example, is always often cold because this climate is cold, whereas a desert, a dry desert, is often humid and hot. That's a different example of a climate. Again, we need to be familiar with these terms of the difference between weather and climate, as we need to define weather and climate and why they mean different things. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Again, I got a couple images of different types of trees, carnivorous trees and deciduous trees with needles, cones, leaves that fall to the ground. More illustration of different types of trees that we saw from last class. And yes, we have talked about ecozones in Canada, different types of ecozones in Canada. So again, just a reminder, an ecozone is an area that has more than one defining characteristics. So we have talked lots about regions. A region has one main characteristics in common. It could be the vegetation, what grows there, or the human population of an area. But when we talk about the ecozone, we're talking about all the factors that come into play. So we're talking about the population, the vegetation, the animals, how animals and humans interact with one another. This is all factors that come into play when we talk about ecozones and how they impact and influence one another. Okay, so for example, a forest can be an ecozone. A body of water can be a type of ecozone. Okay, so in terms of Canada, we have lots of different types of ecozones. Okay, we have 5 marine-based ecozones and 15 land-based ecozones. Since Canada is very diverse and very large in terms of its country, in terms of its landmass, which opens up different types of ecozones that are available in Canada. Okay, so when we talk about marine ecozone, we're talking about how they're related to a body of water, the ocean, or the sea. So all the marine ecozones that we have talked about in terms of Canada are different bodies or different areas of bodies of water in Canada. Again, you can see here we have different types. Okay, we've got the Pacific Marine, Arctic Archipelago Marine, Arctic Bison Marine, Northwest Atlantic Marine, and Atlantic Marine. Okay, again, just a reminder, I don't expect all my students to know every single detail about all the ecozones in Canada, but again, just a reminder, please be familiar with the few. Okay, I'm going to leave the floor open for you to decide which ecozone you want to focus on in terms of your assignments. Okay, but these are the 5 marine ecozones in Canada. Okay, so again, just a reminder, be familiar with this name, its location. So where is it located in terms of Canada? There are illustrations and maps outlined in your textbook. Be familiar with this climate. Um, how cold does it get? Um, does it snow a lot? What kind of weather or climate does that particular ecozone have? Types of animals. What kind of animals live in that particular ecozone? Okay, and how do human interference or impact that particular ecozone? What do we do in that particular area? Okay, it could be fishing, it could be mining, it could be exploring for oil, and such. Okay. Okay, again, Miss Miner, I'm not going to go through all these details right now. Okay, again, all these information about the ecozones are outlined in your textbook. So I'm going to zip through that. Again, there's the terrestrial ecozones in Canada. Again, that's the land base. Okay, how it's related to the earth, how it's talked about the land. Again, like I mentioned, Canada is a very large, diverse country with many different provinces and territories. We extend from the east coast all the way to the west coast. We got northern Canada, where it's always cold, different bodies of water. Southern Ontario is very dense or very highly dense in its population. Okay. Again, all this information is outlined in your textbook. Again, I'm not going to go through every single one of the 15 terrestrial or land-based ecosystem in Canada because we'll just be here all day long talking about it. Okay. Again, if you have any questions about the ecozones, please let me know. But it's pretty straightforward, outlined in your textbook. Okay, and then last class we talked about assignment 13. What is a functional region? Define weather and climate and why they mean different things. Uh, different types of trees. What is an ecozone? And you'll see this little chart. Again, for that little chart on that particular assignment, only focus on 4. Okay, any 4 ecozones of Canada. Okay, it could be marine based or terrestrial based. It could be the ones that I talked about, or it could be something that interests you. Okay, so any 4 different ecozones in Canada. Okay, that's that. And now let's get into our lesson for today and this morning. So again, our learning goals for today, just remember our learning goals are, we will be learning about the 4 different components of our environment. We'll be looking at global warming or climate change, how they impact us and why we should be concerned. We'll also be looking at the Kyoto Protocol and which country have agreed to it in terms of the greenhouse emission gases and such. Okay? So the environment, again, it's a popular term that we have heard many, many times. But when we talk about the environment, we're talking about all the different surrounding areas in terms of the Earth. So there are 4 components. Okay, 4 components. 1, the atmosphere. 2, the hydrosphere. 3, the lithosphere. And the 4th one, the last one, is the biosphere. Okay, there are 4 components: atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere, and the biosphere. Okay, so the first one, the atmosphere, what it means and how it relates to environment, is that we're talking about the air. All the air surrounding the earth, the planet, and such, all the air that we breathe, that is the atmosphere. Okay, the atmosphere, which is the air. Whereas number 2, the hydrosphere contains all the water on this planet. Okay, all the water. Okay, so it could be liquid-based, solid-based, gas-based water, but we're talking about all the different types of water in terms of the hydrosphere. Okay, and the lithosphere, the third one, the lithosphere, means the Earth's crust. So we're talking about all the different rocks, Earth's crust that's above or underneath the Earth's surfaces. Okay, so we're talking about the lithosphere. Whereas the last one, the 4th one, the biosphere, we're talking about plants, animals, people, all the living organisms that are contained on this planet, on this Earth. Okay, that's the biosphere, all the living things, the plants, animals, and humans. Okay, so when we're talking about the environment, we're talking about all these 4 components. Okay, all these four components. Again, just a reminder, there are four components in terms of environment. One, the atmosphere, which is the air. Two, the hydrosphere, which is dealing with the water, any forms or base of water. Three, lithosphere, dealing with the Earth's crust, all the solid or liquid rocks that we have on this Earth, rocks, minerals, metals, and such. And the last one, the fourth one, is the biosphere, which contains all the living organisms, all the living things that we have on this planet. So plants, trees, different types of animals, humans. Okay? Those are the four components of the environment. And what's unique about these four components of the environment, or all these four spheres, is that they all relate to one another. They all connect and relate to one another. So, for example, um, there we have many different types of birds that fly or that can fly. Okay, so these birds they fly in the biosphere. Okay, so sorry, the birds are an example of a biosphere, meaning that they are a living organism, because a bird is a type of animal. Okay, so birds are an example of a biosphere, a living organism, because they are an animal, and they fly in the atmosphere. Okay, they fly in the air, which is the atmosphere. Okay, and they drink water, which is example of a hydrosphere. Okay, for example, us human, we drink water, which is example of a biosphere. Okay, and an example of a lithosphere is that there's soil that helps grow crops and vegetation. Okay, another example is us human. We are example of a biosphere. We need to breathe the air, which is the atmosphere, in order for us to live. Again, we use water for the hydrosphere for drinking water, taking showers and bath, other water-related activities, and again, the lithosphere where we use the ground to grow crops. Okay, all of these four components relate to one another. That's why they're all blending together. Okay. Um, then we're talking about events. When we're talking about events, we can have natural events that occur, such as natural disasters, such as earthquake, hurricane, natural forest fire that happen, is all natural occurrence that are caused by nature. Okay, and then there are human uh, events or occurrence that we impact the environment. Okay, so nature impacts the environment, and we as humans impact the environment as well, such as, for example, there are oil spills. Okay, so we mine for oil in the ocean, and then sometimes there are accidents that can happen, which leads to oil spill in the body of water. Uh, Also, as humans, we impact the air pollution. Okay, the air pollution. So, us by driving in our cars to the learning center, to work, or to groceries, all that pollution impacts the atmosphere, which is the air, and it impacts the air that we breathe in as well. So, all this relates to interaction and in terms of cause and effect. So there are factors and occurrence that impacts the environment naturally, and there are impacts and factors caused by humans, us, that impacts the environment as well. So there are cause and effects in terms of both ways. Again, human impacts the atmosphere as we release carbon dioxide into many sources of the atmosphere. Again, example of burning fossil fuel for energy, mainly due to our cars. Um, because of this release greenhouse gases or gases into the atmosphere, which is trapped and which cause global warming. Okay, global warming. I highlighted in purple, global warming. Okay, again, you might have heard of that term of climate change or global warming, how it has impacted us lately in the last few years or last century or so. Again, this is an example of human activities that we have uh, caused or created that impacts the environment. So global warming. So we'll be looking at into a bit more detail shortly in this lesson. But before we do, we're gonna look at the Kyoto Protocol or the Kyoto Accord. Okay, I highlighted, I bolded, I underlined it in red so that stands out. I'm gonna underline that in blue. So again, as we all know, global warming, climate change, um, us humans have done many negative disasters that impact the environment, which leads to global warming. When we talk about global warming, we're talking about how the temperature of the Earth's or in the atmosphere or in the environment is constantly increasing due to activities done by humans, such as driving more cars, burning more fossil fuel. Okay, this is not a new concern that has been arise. It has been recognized in the past. So what was done was that back in 1997, Canada and other nations got together in Japan, Kyoto, Japan, and started discussing about global warming and its effects. Yes, we do know it's impacting us and the environment. As a result, something that needs to be done. Okay, something that needs to be done in order us to cut back the greenhouse emission. Again, so what the Kyoto Accord or what the Kyoto Protocol again was a international agreement to fight climate change or global warming. Countries such as Canada or developed countries uh, with high leading greenhouse emission gas uh, are brought forward, and they were planning an activity, planning a heavy burden or responsibility on them, on these countries such as Canada, to reduce its greenhouse emission gases. And Canada was the nation, was the country that agreed to sign this agreement. Canada did agree to, work on a plan to cut back its greenhouse emission gases. Um, Countries such as the United States, for example, very interesting one. The United States, our neighbor down south. As we know, the United States is a big, uh, powerful country. We have talked lots about the United States in terms of its influences and factors that impact Canada, in terms of the history and geography portion of this course. Again, the United States is a country that did not, okay, they did not. They said no, they did not agree to sign the Kyoto Protocol, the Kyoto Accord. Okay, which is very unique and interesting, as we know that the United States is a very big and powerful country with lots of people, lots of population, um, which leads to more pollution, more greenhouse gases produced by the United States. Another example can be China. Again, we know China is very heavily dense in terms of its population. More people are living in China and the United States compared to Canada, which means that they are creating more pollution, more greenhouse gases, for example, which impacts the environment overall. Again, the United States did not agree and sign to this Kyoto Protocol, but Canada did. And my next slide, there is an article in your textbook. Okay, there is an article in your textbook on page 57, which it's titled President Bush Answer to Global Warming is Technology. Again, I'm not going to read through all this article, but it's a unique article which outlines why the United States decided not to uh, sign on to the Kyoto Protocol or the Kyoto Accord. Again, just a reminder, the Kyoto Protocol requires countries to cut back its greenhouse gases emission. As you know, there's lots of pollution going on, lots of factors that impact the environment, and the Kyoto Protocol was a method, was an agreement to help reduce this. But again, like I mentioned, the United States did not sign or agree to this agreement. And in this article, it tells you why. Um, and what the President Bush during this time period said was that uh, they wanted to not agree to this because they wanted to develop cleaner technology um, that produces cleaner air or less pollution, is what his answer was. So President Bush of the United States um, did not sign the Kyoto Protocol, did not join this agreement because he was wanted to create cleaner technology whenever possible to produce energy with less pollution. Okay. Again, this article is in your textbook on page 57. Again, I have a map of the world, of the planets, of the Earth, sorry, a lot of different countries. Um, the countries that are more in red are countries that produces more greenhouse emission gases. So again, we got Canada, United States, Mexico, Russia, China, India, okay, Australia, all these countries that are highly developed with lots of technology, with lots of people, are producing a lot of greenhouse gases. Again, if you're interested, I have posted a link that talks more about the Kyoto Protocol and explains what the protocol is uh, in more detail. So if you're interested, you can click on that and have your own reading. Are there any questions, comments, concerns at the moment? Any questions about the Kyoto Protocol? Any questions about the four components of the environment? Again, you'll see all these topics that we talked about in terms of your next assignment, which I'll be talking about shortly. Okay, so right now we're going to talk about global warming. Again, we'll stay on the topic of global warming or climate change. Again, I'm on page 58 of your textbook. So if you have your textbook in front of you, I'm on page 58, looking at global warming. Um, Lots of information here. Again, I'm not going to go through all the details. I did create a few of my own slides that summarizes all the points, which I'll we get into. The first one that, in terms of your textbook, it talks about what does the greenhouse effect have to do with global warming. So as we all know, the greenhouse effect refers to a natural phenomenon that keeps the Earth in a temperature range that allows life to be sustainable. Okay, um, without energy from the sun, for example, we wouldn't be able to live the way we do, or all the living organisms wouldn't be able to live the way they do. Because it would be just too cold. We need the heat to warm up the Earth's surface for us to function the way we normally do. But what's unique about greenhouse gases is that it's warming up the Earth temperature at a faster rate, and it's staying within the ozone layer. So global warming refers to the rise in Earth's temperature resulting from an increase in heat trapping gases in the atmosphere. Okay, so heat is created by the sun, by human, and all that factor impacts global warming as all this heat and temperature from these gases are trapped in the atmosphere known as the ozone layer. Okay? And we're producing all these heat and temperature and gases at a much faster rate um, than seen before in the past, which leads to concerns. Okay, and then it talks about what is causing global warming. Okay, what is causing global warming? Again, we have talked about human impact. Um, a lot of the causes can be blamed on us, on humans. For example, a lot of us drive, like I said, a lot of us may be driving to work or driving to the grocery store, using our cars to get to the learning center or such areas. That is another factor. Um, Burning more fossil fuel for gasoline, which releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. From that heat from the carbon dioxide are then trapped in the atmosphere. Okay, so you may have heard of, using alternative means such as walking, biking, taking public transit, for example, um, helps reduces global warming and greenhouse gases emission. Another factor that may cause global warming is deforestation. Okay, so deforestation, what deforestation means is that we're cutting or we're eliminating or clearing all the forests um, on this planet. So cutting down trees, eliminating forests, which is significant impact because trees and plants, they absorb greenhouse gases. Okay, that's why it's very important to plant trees, plants, because they absorb these carbon dioxides from the atmosphere. Without trees and plants absorbing the carbon dioxides, which means that there will be more carbon dioxides or greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. That's why it's very important to keep our forests, um, not clear out all the land for growth and population. That's why it's very important to keep our forests. Okay, I got a few images to explain what greenhouse effect is. I'm going on to my next image. Okay, as last talked about, we got the sun, which generates heat and energy towards the earth. Okay, that heat and energy is then bounced off the Earth's surface. It's released into the atmosphere. It is trapped in this layer called the ozone layer. Okay, which causes global warming. And by us creating more pollution due to driving, factories, and such, creates more greenhouse gases, which is then more trapped into the atmosphere. Once it's trapped, it cannot be released. Okay, so that's why it's very important that we reduce our greenhouse gases. Again, I got the same image illustration right here. And question number 3 asked in your textbook, is global warming already happening? Most answer will be yes. Global warming is already happening. There are data and scientific evidence that are collected that illustrates that global warming is happening as the Earth temperature is rising. It's a lot warmer nowadays. compared to the past or past centuries. There are evidence that sea level are increasing due to snow and ice and melting glaciers melting, which impacts the ocean sea level. There's also talked about more severe weather happening. Um, there's also talked about how colder areas in the northern hemispheres are now, less cold but more warm, which leads to longer growing seasons. There are talks about decline in plants and animal population, how they cannot sustain this warm climate. Okay, so there's many factors and evidence out there that shows that yes, temperature on Earth is increasing. And all these informations are outlined in your textbook. Again, I'm touching just a few points. Again, it talks about how much warmer is the Earth actually becoming. There are data collected how it's increasing about 1 to 5 degrees over the last 100 years or so. Um, and what can we do to reduce global warming? So I'm going to go to some of the slides I have created to sum up these points. Okay. Again, you won't see these slides or these information in your textbook, but it's pretty much the same information outlined in your textbook, but I just summarized it into my own words, into the information that I have collected over the years. So how does climate affect us? Okay. Again, we talked about the difference in terms of the meaning of weather and climate and what it means. So how does climate affect us? Well, climate affects us by the food we eat, the food we grow, the clothing, the type of shelter we build. So, for example, if it's warmer, in terms of the climate in particular area, we can grow more vegetation, more crops, more food. The clothing impacts us. If it's now warmer nowadays, we'll be not needing our winter jacket as much, winter boots, hats, mitts, gloves. Be wearing more t-shirts, shorts, flip-flops, hats, for example, depending on where you live in the world. Type of shelter we built. Okay, so we may not need more insulation in our home, for example. Heating, air conditioning, for example, are factors due to climate. Okay, so human actions are causing climate to change more quickly than ever before. Okay, human action are causing climate to change more quickly than ever before. Yes, there are scientific data out there that backs this up. Yes, we are experiencing climate change. Yes, we are experiencing global warming. These are all factors. Okay, on my next slide, I have outlined the pros and cons of global warming. So the positive and the negative sides looking at global warming. So as you can see, there are more negative points that I have created in terms of global warming compared to positive. So when looking at the negative side of global warming, some cons are higher sea levels leads to flooding. So as I talked about, glaciers in the northern hemisphere from Iceland and northern countries, glaciers, snows, ice are now melting more quickly, more rapidly, which leads to higher sea levels, which can result in flooding in some areas. Deserts are getting drier as there are less rainfall, um, more humid, hot conditions, so there's drier deserts. There can be results in lead to food shortages, so not much food, for example. We can deal with more illnesses, which leads to diseases and death, because there's no more heat stroke, heat exhaustion now, more extreme weather that comes out of nowhere now. So talk about hurricanes, strong winds, rainfall, thunderstorms are more happening more frequently now. Heat waves. Yes, it's humid. It's hot more. More pollution. Again, flooding, and I also have animals and plant extinction. Okay, this is just some of the negative consequences of global warming. Some of the positive aspects of global warming is that frozen regions such as Siberia, um, Arctic region, the Antarctica region may experience more milder climate, which may result in more plant growth and longer growing seasons. So some may see that as a positive, as colder climate. So, for example, uh, northwestern Ontario may have longer growing seasons due to global warming and climate change. For example, here in Silicon, on this morning, we have still have not seen snowfall or there's no snowfall on this ground. We're still in the low single digits plus side of terms of the temperature, so which is I believe is unique for this area and this time period where we should have snow on the ground or fallen during this time of year. So the weather is really unique right now. I do understand that in some northern communities they do have um, snowfall already, which is great in some cases. Alright, so on my next slide that I have created is that how to deal with climate change. So we have talked lots about what is climate change, what is greenhouse gases, what is pollution, how the earth is increasing in its temperature, but what can we do in order to reduce it or to deal with it or to help it? Yes, we have talked about the Kyoto Protocol, international agreement that Canada agreed upon and signed upon with other nations to help reduce greenhouse gases. But there are many factors that we, as students, citizens, and humans can do to help climate change and global warming. I have created two categories, or where there are two categories, known as mitigation and adaptation. Okay, so mitigation means taking actions to reduce the problems. So we as citizens, as individuals, are taking actions to reduce greenhouse gases and global warming. So one thing that we can do is that we can switch from fossil fuel to solar energy and wind power. So we got solar panels, wind turbines, wind power. Okay, we can drive more fuel efficient cars. Okay, so there's lots of talks nowadays about electric cars and such. Taking public transit, walking, biking, all these factors, um, other means of transportation helps reduce greenhouse gases. Carpooling, for example. Reducing energy. So, for example, turn off your lights. So if you're not in your room, for example, make sure the lights are turned off to save energy. If you're watching TV or not watching TV, make sure your TV's turned off. Or if you're on your laptop screen or computer screen and you're not there at the moment, you can turn off your computer monitor to save some energy. And other factors that we can do to help reduce the problem is plant more trees. Plant more trees, plant more plants. As trees and plants absorbs greenhouse gases, that's a positive. Okay. Uh, Recycle more, reuse more, reduce. So recycle, reuse, reduce, which leads to less garbage as we're recycling more often. So these are all actions and steps that we can do to help reduce global warming, climate change, and greenhouse gases. Another example that I have on my screen is adaptation. Adaptation. So what adaptation means is that yes, we are realizing there is a change in occurrence. We realize that yes, the earth temperature is increasing and rising. Therefore, we must change or adjust to new situation. Okay, we must change or adapt to new situation. So what we can do, for example, is that we can grow crops in new climate. So if it's warmer up north, for example, we can have longer growing season. Uh, the government can expand healthcare to all people, as we are now experiencing more health problem caused by heat stroke or warmer climate or caused by extreme weather. So we can expand healthcare, for example. We can build more parks and space to cool off. So again, something that the government, the city can provide is that we can build more trees, more space to cool off. Again, expand on healthcare. These are just some examples that I have listed and have created um, in order to help deal with climate change and global warming. Okay, so I got pictures of solar panels, wind turbines, biking, walking, planting trees, all examples that we can do on a daily basis every day to help reduce the increase of the Earth's and the atmosphere's increase in temperature. Okay. Are there any questions about what is global warming, how we can reduce it, and such? Again, there are many factors that we can take and do to help reduce global warming. So individual can get involved, the government can get involved by helping creating laws and legislative. Businesses can help as well by implementing actions. Okay, so I'm gonna take some time right now. There's after quickly run out of time to go over your next assignment, assignment 14. Assignment 14. Assignment 14 in your workbook. Again, it's pretty straightforward assignment, no surprises. So question number 1 asks, name and describe the 4 components of the environment. Okay, 1 mark for each, as there's 4. So name and describe. Okay, so name it and describe the 4 components of the environment. Talked about it today, earlier in this class. 4 marks. Question number 2. What does global warming mean and why? And why should we be concerned about its effect on the Earth? Okay, so what does global warming mean? So global warming happens when, or global warming means this. We should be concerned about global warming because this impacts us, this happens, and such. Okay, again, reminder, always write in full, complete sentences. Again, lots of details. Okay, the more details you provide, the better mark you will receive. Okay, there's lots of space, lots of lines provided. If you need more space, I can always write on the back of the sheet. Okay, so that is a big question. That are 5 marks, as you can see, 5 marks. Okay, so I'm looking for lots of examples, lots of details. Okay, what does global warming mean? And why should we be concerned about its effect on the Earth? Okay, so give a couple examples of why we should be concerned about global warming. Okay, so what is it? Why should we be concerned? Question number 3. Name the agreement that has been drafted by international community to address the global warming situation and what it is designed to accomplish. What is holding them back from enforcing it? Okay, so lots of questions are being asked right now. So name the agreement that has been drafted by the international community to address global warming. Again, we talked about it today, and it's in your textbook. And what is it designed to accomplish? So basically, what is its goals? Okay, so what is it designed to accomplish? So what is its purpose? What is the goal? And what is holding them back? Okay, so what is holding them back from enforcing it? Okay. And the last question, question number 4, what can we do as individuals to reduce global warming? What can we do as individuals to reduce global warming? I have gave tons of examples, of my own examples, examples from the textbook. Uh, please list off a few examples of what we can do as individuals to reduce global warming. Okay, and that is assignment 14. Okay, so pretty straightforward, 4 questions, but lots of details, lots is being asked. Okay, no surprises here. I'm gonna stop it here for today, um, because we're almost running out of time. Okay, so we talked lots about today in terms of the environment, global warming, got 30